Where are the biggest Powerball winners now? Billions of dollars. Life-changing numbers most people will never even see, written out in full. These are the biggest Powerball jackpots ever claimed, and years later, here's what actually happened to the people who won them. Some of these winners became household names overnight, others vanished completely, protected by anonymity laws that keep their identities sealed forever. Both paths led somewhere very different, and both tell you something important about what actually happens after the confetti settles on a check this size. The largest Powerball jackpot in history was claimed in November 2022, a staggering $2.04 billion. Won by a single ticket sold in California. The winner, Edwin Castro, eventually came forward publicly, opting for the lump sum payout of roughly $997 million before taxes. In the years since, Castro has kept a relatively low public profile compared to the scale of the win itself, though he's been linked to significant real estate purchases, including multi-million-dollar properties. A pattern common among winners at this level who move a portion of their winnings into tangible, long-term assets rather than leaving everything in cash or investments alone. Castro's win also became notable for a different reason. A lawsuit filed by another individual claiming a share of the prize, a legal dispute that played out publicly and served as an early, very public reminder of exactly the kind of complications that can follow a jackpot this size. The scale of that particular win is almost difficult to process even by lottery standards. $2 billion represents not just the largest Powerball jackpot ever recorded, but one of the largest single lottery prizes claimed by any individual anywhere in the world. That scale brings with it a level of scrutiny most winners never have to navigate. Media attention, public curiosity, and in Castro's case, legal challengers, all arriving within weeks of a win that upended his entire life essentially overnight. Not far behind sits the second largest jackpot in Powerball history, $1.586 billion, split three ways in January 2016 among winners in Tennessee, Florida, and California. This remains one of the most unique stories on this list, simply because of the split three separate individuals or groups, each receiving a life-changing but comparatively smaller share of a truly massive total. Two of the three winning tickets were claimed by groups rather than single individuals, spreading the winnings further among family members and, in at least one case, co-workers who had pooled money together for tickets. Group wins like this tend to follow a noticeably different pattern than single winners. The money divided among trusted people from the outset, often reducing some of the intense external pressure that tends to fall on a single, publicly identified winner. The third largest jackpot in Powerball history, $1.326 billion, was claimed in April 2024 by a winner in Oregon who chose to remain anonymous, a right protected under that state's specific lottery laws. Anonymity at this scale is relatively rare simply because so few states allow it, and winners who secure it are, almost by definition, far harder to track publicly afterward. What's known is limited to the claim itself and the state's confirmation that proper legal and financial arrangements were made before the prize was collected. Exactly the kind of quiet, protected process financial advisors consistently recommend for winners at this scale. Manuel Franco's story stands out on this list for a different reason entirely: transparency. Franco won $768.4 million in March 2019, and rather than disappearing from public view, he's remained one of the more visible winners in Powerball history, giving interviews and sharing insight into his post-win life. Franco has spoken publicly about working with a financial team from the very beginning, describing a deliberate, methodical approach to managing the winnings rather than making immediate, large purchases. His comparative openness has made him something of a reference point for other winners and researchers studying sudden wealth, a rare public example of someone documenting documenting the process in real time rather than retreating into total privacy immediately after claiming. What makes Franco's public approach particularly interesting to researchers is how deliberately measured it has appeared over time. Rather than a single dramatic reveal followed by silence, he's continued to surface in interviews and public appearances years after his win, offering a rare, ongoing look at how someone at this wealth level navigates decisions most winners make privately. Decisions about giving, about lifestyle, about balancing generosity with long-term planning, all playing out with far more visibility than almost any other winner on this list has allowed. Mavis Wanchik, who won $758.7 million in August 2017, became one of the most recognizable faces among major Powerball winners, specifically because she claimed her prize under her real name, holding a press conference shortly after coming forward. Wanchik, a hospital worker at the time of her win, spoke publicly about her plans to retire immediately and focus on family, and by most public accounts in the years since, she has maintained a relatively private, low-key lifestyle despite the massive public attention that followed her initial announcement, an approach financial planners often point to as a healthy long-term pattern, visible and grateful in the immediate aftermath, but deliberately quiet in the years that followed. The $754.6 million jackpot claimed in February 2023 by a Washington state winner represents another anonymous claim, protected under that state's laws in a similar way to the Oregon win. As with other anonymous claims on this list, public information beyond the confirmed win itself remains limited, which is, according to most financial advisors specializing in sudden wealth, often exactly the intended outcome, the winner able to manage a fortune this size without the added pressure and scrutiny that comes with public recognition. Further down the list of massive Powerball jackpots, patterns start to emerge across nearly every case, regardless of whether the winner chose to remain public or private. Nearly every winner at this scale who has spoken publicly or whose actions have been reported afterward describes assembling a team almost immediately, an attorney specializing in sudden wealth, a financial advisor, often a dedicated accountant, before making any major decisions about spending or investment. This pattern shows up consistently enough across winners at every level of this list that financial professionals studying lottery windfalls point to it as close to a universal first step among winners who go on to manage their fortune successfully over the following years. Another consistent pattern across these massive jackpots involves the choice between lump sum and annuity, and at this scale, the overwhelming majority of winners choose the lump sum, despite it representing a significantly smaller total than the advertised jackpot figure. Financial advisors point to a specific reasoning behind this trend at the highest jackpot levels. Winners this wealthy often already have access to sophisticated investment guidance, capable of managing a large lump sum effectively, making the lump sum's flexibility more valuable to them than the guaranteed structure an annuity provides, a calculation that looks different for winners at lower, though still enormous, jackpot amounts. Real estate shows up again and again across winners at this level, not just as an indulgence, but as a genuine long-term financial strategy. Multiple winners on this list in the years following their win have been linked to significant property purchases, some in multiple states or countries, a pattern financial advisors describe as a sensible way to convert a portion of liquid winnings into stable, appreciating assets rather than leaving an enormous sum entirely exposed to market volatility or spending temptation. This pattern makes sense once you consider the sheer scale of money involved at this level. A lump sum in the hundreds of millions or billions of dollars simply can't sit entirely in a single bank account or investment portfolio without introducing serious concentration risk, and diversifying into real estate offers winners both a tangible, enjoyable use of their fortune and a genuine hedge against the ups and downs of financial markets, a combination that explains why property purchases show up so consistently across nearly every major winner's story, regardless of whether they chose to remain public or private. Litigation is another theme that surfaces repeatedly among the very biggest winners. Disputes over ticket ownership, claims from estranged family members, and in some cases, disagreements among group winners about how funds should be divided or managed going forward. The sheer size of jackpots at this level seems to make legal disputes almost statistically inevitable. Enough money changes hands that someone, somewhere, is likely to contest some part of the process, which is exactly why the attorneys these winners hire in the earliest days after winning tend to remain closely involved for years afterward, not just for the initial claim, but for the ongoing legal protection a fortune this size requires. These disputes rarely resolve quickly either. Legal challenges involving jackpots this large often stretch across multiple years, working through appeals, settlements, and in some cases entirely separate lawsuits that emerge only after the initial dust has settled. For winners caught in the middle of this kind of prolonged legal process, the actual experience of having won can end up looking very different from the celebratory image most people picture. Years spent working closely with attorneys, careful about public statements, and often unable to fully move forward with life plans until legal matters are completely resolved. What's perhaps most notable across this entire list when you step back and look at the pattern as a whole is how differently these stories have unfolded compared to older, more infamous lottery ruin stories from decades past. Winners at this scale, claiming jackpots in the past decade specifically, appear far more likely to have engaged professional financial and legal teams immediately, likely a reflection of just how much public awareness around sudden wealth mismanagement has grown, fueled in part by exactly the kind of cautionary stories that have circulated for years about earlier winners who didn't take those same precautions. That doesn't mean every story on this list has a clean, fully resolved ending. Some winners remain entirely private, their long-term outcomes essentially unknown to the public. Others have faced ongoing legal battles that, years later, are still working their way through courts. But taken together, the biggest Powerball winners in history tell a noticeably different story than the cautionary lottery tales that dominated public perception for so long. A story defined less by dramatic collapse and more by careful professional management, quiet real estate portfolios. And, for those who chose to stay public, a surprisingly grounded approach to navigating a level of wealth almost nobody is ever truly prepared for. It's a genuinely encouraging shift when you consider how differently these stories could have unfolded. A generation ago, the cautionary tales dominated the conversation entirely. Winners who spent recklessly, trusted the wrong people, and watched fortunes this size evaporate within years. The biggest winners of the past decade appear to have absorbed those lessons, whether directly or simply through a cultural shift in how sudden wealth is discussed and planned for. And the result is a set of stories that, while not universally perfect, look far more stable than what came before.